But if they come for us with war, we will show them why humans earned the right to reach for the stars. 3 days after the battle, Commander Thanekor stood in a detention cell on Olympus Station. Through the transparent wall, he could see Earth hanging in space below him, beautiful and blue and utterly terrifying. That peaceful-looking planet had just destroyed the largest military fleet the Vakthari Empire had sent in a generation. The door opened, and Admiral J1 entered, followed by Colonel Minji. The two humans looked tired but satisfied. They had spent the last 3 days coordinating cleanup operations, collecting data from the battle, and preparing reports for Earth's various governments. "Sit," J1 commanded, gesturing to a chair. Thanekor sat. He had been defeated before in small skirmishes, but never like this. Never so completely, so quickly, so absolutely. His pride was broken. His confidence was shattered. He was a warrior who had forgotten what it felt like to truly fear an enemy. "You're probably wondering why we kept you alive," J1 said, sitting across from him. Minji remained standing, her arms crossed, her expression hard. "To torture me," Thanekor replied bitterly. "To extract information about the Empire." "No," J1 said simply. "We don't torture prisoners. That's not who we are. We kept you alive because we need you to deliver a message." "What message?" "The truth," Minji answered. "About what happened here. About what humanity is capable of. About what will happen if anyone else tries what you tried." J1 pulled up a holographic display showing the battle statistics. "In 14 minutes of combat, you lost 623 ships. We lost nothing. Not a single ship. Not a single station. Not a single human life after you murdered those civilians on Mars." He let that sink in for a moment before continuing. "Do you know why your intelligence reports about Earth were so wrong? Because we wanted them to be wrong. For 50 years, we've been preparing for first contact. We built weapons. We developed technology. We created defense systems that would terrify even us, but we kept it all secret. We made ourselves look weak. We made ourselves look harmless. Why?" Thanekor asked. "Why hide your strength?" "Because we hoped we'd never have to use it," Colonel Minji said. "We hoped that when we finally met other species, they would come in peace. We hoped for friendship, for trade, for cooperation. But we're not stupid. We know that hope is not a strategy. So while we hoped for peace, we prepared for war." She walked to the window and looked out at Earth. "My brother died on Mars. He was a botanist, trying to grow plants in Martian soil. He had a wife and 2 children back on Earth. They'll never see him again because you killed him to make a point." Thanekor felt something he hadn't expected. Shame. The scientists on Mars hadn't been warriors. They hadn't been threats. They had been civilians, researchers, dreamers trying to expand their species' reach into space. And he had ordered their deaths without a second thought. "I followed orders," he said weakly. "Yes," J1 agreed. "And now you will follow new orders." "Our orders. You will return to the Vakthari Empire. You will report exactly what happened here. You will tell them about our weapons. You will tell them about the quantum bombs that erase ships from existence. You will tell them about the nanobots that disassemble matter at the molecular level. You will tell them about our railguns, our nuclear lances, our mass drivers, our stealth technology." "You want me to tell them everything?" Thanekor was confused. "Why would you reveal your capabilities?" "Because we want them to know," Minji said. "We want every species in the galaxy to know. Earth is not defenseless. Earth is not weak. Earth is not prey. Attack us and you will face weapons that will haunt your nightmares." J1 leaned forward. "But here's the important part of the message, Thanekor. Are you listening?" The alien nodded. "If you leave us alone, we will leave you alone. Humanity doesn't want to conquer the galaxy. We don't want to build an empire. We don't want to dominate other species. We just want to exist, to grow, to explore the universe in peace. But if anyone threatens us, if anyone attacks our worlds, if anyone kills our people..." He paused, letting the weight of his words sink in. "We will respond with everything we have. And what you saw in this battle was only a fraction of what we're capable of." Thanekor felt his blood run cold. "Only a fraction?" "We have weapons we didn't use," Minji confirmed. "Weapons we hope we never have to use. Weapons that would make the quantum bombs look like toys." She wasn't lying. Deep in secure facilities across Earth's solar system, scientists had developed weapons even more terrible than what they had deployed. Antimatter bombs that could destroy entire fleets. Biological weapons that could target specific genetic codes. artificial intelligence systems that could hack and control enemy ships, gravitational weapons that could create miniature black holes. Humanity had looked at every law of physics and asked the same question: how can we weaponize this? "You're monsters," Thanakor whispered. "No," Jaewon said firmly. "We're survivors. There's a difference. Monsters kill for pleasure, for sport, for no reason. We kill only when necessary, only when threatened, only to protect our home and our people. Everything we did to your fleet, we did because you came here with war. You fired first. You murdered civilians. You demanded our surrender. We only responded." He stood and walked to the window, joining Minji in looking at Earth. "Do you know what that planet down there is? It's a death world, a planet where nearly everything evolved to kill and eat everything else. Predators everywhere, diseases, parasites, natural disasters. For millions of years, our ancestors survived by being smarter, tougher, and more adaptable than everything that wanted to kill them. We didn't evolve on a peaceful world," Minji added. "We evolved in constant danger. Our entire history is one long story of survival against impossible odds. Ice ages that should have killed us, volcanic eruptions that covered the sky, plagues that killed millions, predators with claws and teeth, and we survived it all. We learned. We adapted. We became the apex predator of our own world." She turned to look at Thanakor. "So when you came here expecting to find easy prey, you made a terrible mistake. You found the most dangerous species in our part of the galaxy. You found the species that learned to wage war on its own planet, for thousands of years before we even reached space. You found humans." Jaewon returned to his chair. "Here's what's going to happen. We're releasing you. We're giving you a ship, nothing fancy, just enough to get you home. You're going to fly back to the Vakthari Empire and tell them everything. And you're going to give them a choice." "What choice?" Thanakor asked. "Peace or war. Leave Earth alone and we'll leave you alone. We won't seek revenge for Mars. We won't hunt down the ships that escaped. We won't come to your worlds with fleets and demands. We'll simply maintain our borders and defend what's ours." "And if the Empire chooses war?" Thanakor had to ask. "Then we'll show the galaxy what happens when you make an enemy of humanity," Colonel Minji said quietly. "We'll show them weapons that make this battle look like a skirmish. We'll show them why you should never ever threaten a species that survived on a death world." The next day, Captain Daeho watched from Olympus Station as the small ship carrying Thanakor departed the solar system. Lieutenant Sung-min stood beside him, both men silent as they watched the alien vessel accelerate toward the edge of the system. "Do you think it will work, sir?" Sung-min asked. "Do you think the message will be enough?" "I hope so," Daeho replied. "I really hope so, because if it doesn't, if someone else comes with another fleet, we'll have to do this again. And next time I don't think the Admiral will show mercy." "Were we merciful?" Sung-min asked quietly. "We killed thousands of them. We let hundreds escape," Daeho pointed out. "We could have tracked them down and destroyed them in deep space. We had the capability, but we chose not to. We let them live so they could spread the word, so other species would know what happens if they attack Earth. That's a kind of mercy, even if it doesn't feel like it. On Earth," Dr. Hana sat in her laboratory beneath the moon's surface, looking at her screens showing the quantum weapon systems. She had spent 20 years developing these weapons. She had hoped she would never have to use them. But when the order came, she hadn't hesitated. Now, looking at the data from the battle, she felt sick. The quantum bombs didn't just destroy ships. They erased them from reality, leaving the survivors with confused memories and a growing sense of horror, as they realized people they knew had simply stopped existing. It was the most terrible weapon humanity had ever created. And she had built it. "Dr. Hana," her assistant said quietly, "the Admiral is asking if we should dismantle the quantum systems now that the battle is over." Hana was quiet for a long moment. Part of her wanted to say yes, to destroy these horrible weapons and make sure they were never used again. But another part of her, the part that had watched Mars colony die, the part that understood how dangerous the galaxy could be, knew the answer. "No," she said finally. "Keep them operational. Keep them hidden. And pray we never have to use them again." On Luna Base, Private June returned to his quarters after a long shift maintaining the mass driver systems. He sat on his bunk and pulled out his personal tablet, starting to write a message to his family back on Earth. They had been asking him about T. The quantum displacement bombs did something that shouldn't have been possible. They didn't just destroy the Vakthari ships, they erased them from reality itself. One moment, a Vakthari destroyer was there, shields up, weapons firing, crew of 300 warriors fighting desperately. The next moment, nothing. No debris, no energy signature, no trace that the ship had ever existed at all. On other alien vessels, something even more horrifying happened. Crew members who had served on those ships started to feel confused. They had memories of friends, of fellow warriors they had fought beside for years. But when they tried to remember details, the memories became fuzzy. When they tried to access personnel records, those records were gone. When they looked at old mission reports, entire sections were blank. It was as if those ships and their crews had been cut out of history like pages torn from a book. "Commander," a Vakthari officer shouted in panic on the bridge of the Crimson Dominion. "I can't remember. I had a brother serving on the Warfang, but now I can't remember his name. I can't remember what he looked like." Thanakor felt ice in his veins. This was beyond any weapon he had ever heard of. This was beyond war. This was something darker, something that violated the basic rules of reality itself. "All ships retreat," he finally screamed. "Full power to engines. We're leaving the system now." "Finally," Corval muttered, working his console to coordinate the retreat. "We should have run the moment." Another wave of quantum bombs detonated. 15 more ships vanished. Gone, erased, never existed. The Vakthari fleet, what remained of it, broke formation and fled. Ships scattered in every direction, engines burning at maximum power, desperate to escape Earth's orbital space and jump to faster-than-light speeds. But humanity wasn't done with them yet. Phase 4, Admiral Jawan commanded from the war room. His voice was calm, but his eyes were hard as diamonds. "Deploy the swarm." Dr. Hana activated another system, this one even more terrifying than the quantum bombs. From hidden storage bays on the moon and on several orbital platforms, clouds of tiny objects launched into space. Each cloud contained billions of microscopic machines, nanobots, self-replicating, self-organizing, designed with one purpose: to consume. The Vakthari called them the Grey Death when the clouds reached their ships. The nanobots moved through space like fog, like smoke, like living darkness. When they touched the hull of a fleeing warship, they began to work. At first, nothing seemed to happen. The ship continued to fly, engines still burning, crew still alive. Then crew members started noticing strange things. Control panels weren't responding quite right. Display screens showed errors. Metal surfaces looked slightly corroded. Within 60 seconds, the problems accelerated. Hull plating began to crumble. Internal systems failed one by one. The nanobots were taking the ship apart at the molecular level, breaking down the metal and circuits and everything else into basic atoms, and using those atoms to build more nanobots. One Vakthari cruiser was completely disassembled in 3 minutes. The crew managed to evacuate in escape pods before the ship fell apart around them, but they watched in absolute horror as their vessel simply came apart like sand in the wind. "What are these humans?" a young Vakthari warrior whispered in his escape pod. "What kind of species creates weapons like this?" The answer, though he didn't know it, was simple. Humans created these weapons because humans were the species that had survived 4 billion years on a planet that constantly tried to kill them. They were the species that had turned every disaster, every catastrophe, every near-extinction event into a lesson learned. They were the species that looked at the atom and decided to split it. They were the species that looked at quantum physics and decided to weaponize it. They were survivors. And survivors did whatever was necessary to keep surviving. On the Phantom Wind, Commander Tae Young watched his tactical display with grim satisfaction. His stealth fleet had caused massive damage in the opening seconds of the battle, but now they had a new mission. His orders came directly from Admiral J1. "All stealth units, this is Admiral J1. The enemy is attempting to retreat. Our objective is no longer to destroy all ships. I repeat, our objective is not total destruction. Allow most of the fleet to escape. But mark them, track them, and capture their flagship." Tae Young smiled coldly. "You heard the Admiral. All ships switch to tracking mode. Paint every Vakthari vessel with locator nanobots. Let them run. But mark them so we can find them anywhere in the galaxy if we need to." His weapons officer launched special missiles. These didn't explode. Instead, they released clouds of tracker nanobots that attached to enemy ships. The tiny machines would stay dormant, nearly impossible to detect, but they would send out a signal that Earth could follow for years. Tracking solution on enemy flagship acquired, the tactical officer reported. The Crimson Dominion is attempting to reach jump distance. Don't let them, Tae-young commanded. Disable their engines, but don't destroy the ship. The Admiral wants prisoners. The Phantom Wind and 3 other stealth ships positioned themselves around the Crimson Dominion. They fired electromagnetic pulse weapons at precisely calculated points on the enemy flagship. The EMP blasts fried the ship's engine systems and faster-than-light drive, but left life support and basic systems intact. Target is disabled, sir, the weapons officer confirmed. They're drifting. No engine power. Prepare boarding teams, Tae-young ordered. We're going in. On the bridge of the Crimson Dominion, Commander Thanakor sat in his command chair, staring at displays that showed the death of his fleet. In just under 14 minutes of combat, Earth had destroyed over 600 of his 847 ships. The rest were fleeing, scattered across the solar system, desperately trying to reach the jump point that would let them escape to faster-than-light travel. His own ship was crippled. Human boarding pods were attaching to his hull right now. He could hear the cutting torches working through the airlock doors. Korval, he said quietly. I failed. I underestimated them. The old warrior nodded slowly. Yes, Commander. You did, we all did. The intelligence we received about humans was incomplete. Dangerously incomplete. How could they hide all this? How could we not know they had weapons like this? Because they are paranoid, Korval said. And paranoid species are dangerous species. They prepare for threats that haven't arrived yet. They build weapons for wars they hope will never happen. And when someone finally attacks them, he gestured at the ruined remains of the fleet on the tactical display. This is the result. The airlock door exploded inward. Human soldiers poured through, wearing powered armor and carrying weapons that looked too advanced for such a young species. They moved with professional efficiency, securing the bridge in seconds. Commander Tae-young entered last, removing his helmet to reveal a human face that showed no emotion whatsoever. He looked at Thanakor with eyes as cold as space itself. Commander Thanakor of the Vakthari Empire, Tae-young said formally. You are under arrest for war crimes, specifically the murder of 3,000 civilian researchers on Mars colony. You will be held for trial under Earth's military justice system. You dare? Thanakor struggled to speak. I am a fleet commander. I represent the Vakthari Empire. You cannot. Your empire is not here, Tae-young interrupted. Your fleet is destroyed. You are in our space, under our jurisdiction. You will face justice for your crimes. Thanakor was pulled from his chair by human soldiers. As they led him away, he turned to look back at Tae-young. You haven't won anything, human. When the Empire learns what happened here, they will send 1,000 fleets. They will burn your world to ash. Tae-young's expression didn't change. No, they won't. Would you like to know why? He didn't wait for an answer. He pulled up a holographic display showing the tactical summary of the battle. 14 minutes from first shot to complete victory. 623 enemy ships destroyed. Earth casualties 0. Because you're going to tell them what happened here, Tae-young said quietly. You're going to tell them that Earth destroyed your fleet in 14 minutes. You're going to tell them that we have weapons they've never seen before. Weapons that erase ships from existence. Weapons that disassemble matter at the molecular level. Weapons that use the power of the atom itself. He leaned closer to the Vakthari commander. And you're going to tell them that this was us being merciful. We could have killed everyone. We let most of your fleet escape. We could have tracked them down and destroyed them in deep space, but we chose not to. Do you understand what I'm telling you? Thanakor stared at him in horror, finally understanding. You're making an example of us. You want us to spread fear of Earth across the galaxy. Not fear, Tae-young corrected. Respect. We want the galaxy to know that humanity is not prey. We're not victims. We're not a species to be conquered. We are the species that survived on a death world. We are the species that split the atom before we left our own planet. We are the species that looked at the darkness between stars and decided to claim it as our own. He gestured to his soldiers, who began leading Thanakor away. Tell the galaxy that if they leave us alone, we will leave them alone, Tae-young called after him. For exactly 3 seconds after Captain Daeho finished speaking, nothing happened. The Vakthari fleet hung in space, surrounding Earth like predators that had caught their prey. Commander Thanakor was about to order his weapons officer to fire on the station as punishment for the humans' insolence. Then the darkness came alive. Every human ship that had appeared dead suddenly blazed with power. Engines roared to life. Weapon systems activated. Shield generators hummed with energy. In less than 5 seconds, the entire human fleet went from appearing completely defeated to full combat readiness. But that was just the beginning. All around the Vakthari fleet, space itself seemed to wake up. What had appeared on sensors as debris fields, as dead satellites, as empty space, suddenly revealed themselves as weapons platforms. Hundreds of them. Thousands of them. They had been there all along, hidden and silent, waiting for the enemy to come close enough. Impossible, Thanakor shouted. Our sensors showed nothing. Where did these come from? Corval, the old warrior, felt his blood run cold. Stealth technology. Commander, they've been here the whole time. We're surrounded. On his sensor display, new signatures were appearing every second. Missile platforms, railgun batteries, energy weapon arrays, ships that had been hiding with their power signatures reduced to almost nothing. The Vakthari had thought they were surrounding Earth. Instead, Earth had surrounded them. All ships evasive maneuvers. Thanakor ordered. Return fire. Destroy these humans. But before the Vakthari could react, the first wave hit them. From Olympus Station and the other defense platforms, railguns opened fire. These weren't the simple kinetic weapons that most species used. Humanity had perfected magnetic acceleration to terrifying levels. Each projectile was a tungsten rod, moving at a significant fraction of light speed, carrying energy measured in megatons. The outer ring of Vakthari ships never saw it coming. The railgun rounds punched through their shields as if they weren't there. The projectiles hit armor plating and kept going, tearing through ship after ship. Some rounds went through 3 or 4 vessels before their energy was finally spent. Explosions lit up space like a chain of new stars being born. 20 Vakthari ships were destroyed in the first 10 seconds. Their crews died before they could even understand what had killed them. Status report, Thanakor screamed. We've lost the entire outer defensive ring, Commander. Enemy fire is too fast, too powerful. Our shields cannot stop it. Then activate point defense. Shoot down their projectiles. Sir, the projectiles are moving too fast. Our targeting systems can't track them. Thanakor felt something he hadn't experienced in his entire military career. Fear. Real, genuine fear. These humans weren't supposed to be capable of this. Intelligence reports had said they were barely spacefaring, that their weapons were primitive, that they would be easy to conquer. Those reports had been catastrophically wrong. In the war room beneath Geneva, Admiral Jawan watched the battle unfold with cold satisfaction. The first phase had gone exactly as planned. The aliens had walked into the trap perfectly, spreading their forces to surround Earth, putting themselves in the worst possible tactical position. Colonel Minji, execute Phase 2, he commanded. Yes, sir. All units, Phase 2 is go. Engage with Kasaba howitzers. Around Earth's orbital space, massive cylinders that had been disguised as old fuel tanks suddenly revealed their true nature. These were Kasaba howitzers, weapons that humanity had developed decades ago but kept secret from the galaxy. Each one was essentially a nuclear bomb shaped and focused into a beam of plasma. When they fired, the result was devastating. Spears of nuclear fire crossed the space between Earth and the Vakthari fleet in milliseconds. Each beam carried the power of an atomic explosion, focused into a stream of plasma moving at 3% of light speed. When they hit the alien ship's armor evaporated, hull plating melted, internal structures burned. 16 more Vakthari vessels were cut in half by the Kasaba strikes. Their crews died screaming as nuclear fire consumed them. Impossible, Thanakor shouted again. They're using nuclear weapons in space combat. This is insanity. Commander, we need to retreat, Corval urged. We've already lost 36 ships in less than a minute. This isn't a battle, it's a massacre. No, we have 800 ships. They cannot possibly have enough weapons to... He was interrupted by another wave of destruction. This time it came from the moon. Private June sat at his console on Luna Base, his hands steady now despite his fear. When the order came through to fire the mass drivers, he didn't hesitate. He pressed the firing sequence and felt the entire base shake as the electromagnetic cannons launched their payloads. The mass drivers threw asteroids at the Vakthari fleet. Not small rocks, but carefully selected chunks of dense metal and stone, each one weighing thousands of tons. The electromagnetic rails accelerated them to 10% of light speed in less than 3 seconds. At that velocity, they weren't just rocks. They were relativistic weapons, They carried more kinetic energy than the largest bombs humanity had ever built. The first asteroid hit a Vakthari dreadnought dead center. The ship didn't explode. It simply ceased to exist in any recognizable form. The impact released so much energy that the vessel was vaporized instantly, along with everything within a kilometer of the impact point. The shockwave caught two other ships and tore them apart. Mass drivers firing continuously, June reported, his voice steady now. Tracking solutions locked. All rounds on target. 3 more asteroids launched from the moon, each one aimed at a different Vakthari capital ship. 3 more massive explosions lit up space. On the Crimson Dominion, chaos ruled the bridge. Alarm systems screamed. Officers shouted conflicting reports. Damage assessments scrolled across displays too fast to read. "We've lost 50 ships," the tactical officer shouted. "No, correction, 60 ships. They're picking off our capitals first. All power to shields," Thanacor ordered. "Concentrate fleet formation. We need to. Commander, we're detecting new contacts. Inside our formation. What? That's impossible. Nothing could, but it wasn't impossible." Commander Tae Young and his stealth fleet had been hiding inside the Vakthari formation the entire time. Their ships were coated with materials that absorbed sensor scans. Their power signatures had been reduced to levels indistinguishable from cosmic background radiation. They had drifted among the alien vessels like ghosts, unseen and unsuspected. Now they revealed themselves, and the nightmare intensified. Tae Young's ship, the Phantom Wind, materialized less than a kilometer from a Vakthari cruiser. At that range, there was no possibility of missing. His weapons officer fired and torpedoes crossed the distance in less than a second. They weren't conventional warheads. They were antimatter weapons, small but incredibly destructive. The Vakthari cruiser exploded with a flash of light that briefly outshone the sun. All around the alien fleet, the same thing was happening. 50 human stealth ships appeared among their enemies and fired at point-blank range. 50 Vakthari vessels died in as many seconds. "This isn't a battle," Korval said quietly, watching his display in horror. "This is an execution." Thanacor stood frozen at his command console. In less than 2 minutes, he had lost over 100 ships. The humans weren't just fighting back. They were destroying his fleet with terrifying efficiency. Every human weapon seemed designed specifically to counter Vakthari technology. Their railguns were too fast to intercept. Their nuclear beams burned through shields. Their asteroids hit with unstoppable force. Their stealth ships appeared and disappeared like demons. "Sir, what are your orders?" his tactical officer asked desperately. Thanacor opened his mouth to answer, but no words came out. For the first time in his long military career, he had no idea what to do. Every tactical doctrine he knew was useless against an enemy like this. In the war room, Admiral Jaewon allowed himself a small, cold smile. Colonel Minji informed Dr. Hana to prepare the special weapons. "It's time to show them what real terror looks like." "Yes, sir, Dr. Hana. You are authorized to deploy quantum weapons at your discretion." Deep in her lunar laboratory, Dr. Hana input the final activation codes. Her hands were steady. Her conscience was clear. The Vakthari had come to her world with war. They had murdered civilians. They had demanded surrender without negotiation. Now they would learn what it meant to fight a species that had spent 50 years preparing for this exact moment, quantum displacement. "Bombs are armed and ready," she reported. "Targets locked. Firing in 3, 2, 1. In space above Earth, reality itself began to scream. Commander Thanacor saw something on his display that his mind couldn't comprehend. 20 of his ships simply disappeared, not exploded, not destroyed. They just ceased to exist as if they had never been there at all. "What was that?" he whispered. No one could answer him. No one knew. The Vakthari had never encountered weapons like this before. No species in the galaxy had weapons like this. Only humanity did. And Earth was just getting started. The Vakthari fleet continued its advance toward Earth. Every alien warrior aboard those ships expected to see panic from the humans. They expected desperate transmissions begging for mercy. They expected to see ships fleeing or mounting a hopeless defense. Instead, they saw nothing. Every human vessel in space had gone completely silent. Military ships that had been patrolling near Jupiter simply stopped moving and drifted like dead metal. Defense stations orbiting Earth powered down their weapons and shields. Even the tiny research ships near Saturn cut their engines and went dark. It was as if every human in space had simply given up at the same moment. "This is too easy," Korval said again from his station on the flagship. The old warrior's instincts were screaming at him that something was wrong. "Commander Thanakor, I must protest. This is not normal surrender behavior." Thanakor laughed. "What would you have them do? They saw what we did to Mars. They know they cannot fight us. Humans are intelligent enough to recognize when they are defeated." "But they haven't even tried to negotiate," Korval insisted. "Every species asks for terms. They ask to keep their lives, their freedom, something. These humans have said nothing." "Then they are wiser than most," Thanakor replied. "They know we offer no terms. There is only submission or death." On one of the smaller Vakthari cruisers, a young sensor technician named Hyunwoo noticed something odd. He was human, not Vakthari. The Empire had conquered his colony world when he was a child and forced him into their service. He had learned to keep his head down and follow orders to survive. But now, looking at his sensor readings, he saw something that made his heart beat faster. There were faint energy signatures scattered throughout the space around Earth. They were so weak that the automatic systems ignored them as background radiation. But Hyunwoo had grown up around human technology. He recognized the pattern of a power source on minimal standby mode. Hundreds of them, maybe thousands. His hands shook as he worked his console, trying to get a clearer reading without alerting the Vakthari officers who constantly watched over the human workers. The signatures were coming from what appeared to be debris fields, from asteroids, from empty patches of space where sensors showed nothing but vacuum. "You, human slave," a Vakthari officer barked at him. "Why are you running unauthorized scans?" "Routine system check, sir," Hyunwoo replied quickly, his voice steady despite his fear. "Just making sure our sensors are calibrated correctly. They're fine. Return to your assigned duties." "Yes, sir." Hyunwoo sat back, his mind racing. He wanted to send a warning to the fleet commander, but he knew what would happen. The Vakthari would kill him for speaking out of turn. They had made examples of humans who tried to give advice before, and even if they listened, even if they believed him, what would change? The Empire had 847 warships. The humans had shown no weapons, no defense, nothing but silence. Maybe he was wrong. Maybe those signatures meant nothing. But deep down, he didn't think so. On Earth, in the underground war room beneath Geneva, Admiral Jaewon watched the tactical displays. The Vakthari fleet was approaching the Rubicon line, the defensive boundary Earth had established at 450,000 kilometers from the planet's surface. Every ship and station had orders not to reveal themselves until the enemy crossed that line. "All units report ready, Admiral," Colonel Minji said. She stood beside him, her posture military perfect, her expression cold as ice. "Ground-based systems are armed. Orbital platforms are in position. Stealth units are tracking their targets. Lunar weapons?" Jaewon asked. "Mass drivers are loaded and calibrated," she confirmed. "Dr. Hana reports all special weapons are online and awaiting your command." Jaewon nodded slowly. He looked at the red line on his display marking the Rubicon boundary. The first Vakthari ships would cross it in 90 seconds. Once they did, there would be no going back. Humanity would reveal itself, and the galaxy would learn what kind of species had evolved on Earth. "Remind all units," he said quietly. "No one fires before I give the order. No matter what happens, no matter what they do, we wait until I say so. We only get one chance to make this impression." Around the room, officers acknowledged the command. They all knew what was at stake. If they fired too early, before the aliens were fully committed, some might escape. Those ships would return with reinforcements and Earth would face an even larger fleet. But if they waited until the entire Vakthari force was deep inside Earth's defensive sphere, they could end this invasion in one devastating strike. It was a gamble. A terrifying gamble with billions of lives hanging in the balance. On Olympus Station, Captain Daeho stood at his command console watching the enemy fleet approach. His crew was silent, every person at their station, every hand ready on their controls. They had all been trained for this moment, but training was different from reality. This was their world down below. Their families. Their friends. Everything they loved. Lieutenant Sung Min turned to look at his captain. "Sir, they're getting very close. If they fire on the station, they won't," Daeho said calmly. "They want the stations intact to use as their own command posts. They think we're already beaten." "Are we really going to let them get this close?" "Yes, trust the plan, Lieutenant. Trust the Admiral. And trust that every person on this station knows exactly what to do when the time comes." Sungmin nodded and turned back to his console, trying to match his captain's calm demeanor even though his stomach was twisted in knots. Across human space, the silence continued. On Luna Base, Private June sat in the control room for the mass drivers, the massive electromagnetic cannons built into the moon's surface. He was only 22 years old, fresh out of training and absolutely terrified. The weapons he was responsible for could throw asteroids at relativistic speeds, but they were also incredibly dangerous. If he made a mistake with the targeting, he could kill millions of humans instead of aliens. His hands were sweating inside his gloves. He wiped them on his uniform and tried to focus on his training. Private June, his commanding officer, said over the comm, "Status check. Mass driver systems fully operational, sir," June replied, proud that his voice didn't shake. "Ammunition loaded. Targeting solutions calculated. Waiting for authorization to fire. Good, stay sharp. When this starts, it's going to happen fast." "Yes, sir." June looked at his screens. He could see the Vakthari fleet spreading out above Earth like a net of predators surrounding their prey. They had no idea what was hidden beneath them on the moon's surface. They had no idea that those craters they had scanned were actually the barrels of the mass drivers, covered with dust and debris to look natural. They had no idea about any of it. Commander Thanecore stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Crimson Dominion, and allowed himself to feel pride. Another world added to the Empire. Another species brought under Vakthari rule. His superiors would reward him for this conquest. His name would be remembered. "All ships report in position, Commander," his tactical officer announced. "We have the planet completely surrounded. Their defense stations remain dark. Their ships show no power signatures. Excellent. Open a channel. Let us receive their formal surrender." The channel opened. For a long moment there was only silence. Then a human voice spoke, calm and clear, with no trace of fear or defeat in it. "Vakthari Fleet, this is Captain Deho of Earth Defense Station Olympus." Thanecore smiled. "Ah, finally. You are ready to surrender then?" "No," Deho replied. "I'm ready to inform you that you have violated sovereign human territory. You have murdered 3,000 civilians without provocation. You have crossed the Rubicon line, designated Earth orbital zone at 450,000 kilometers from planetary surface." "And what does this mean, human?" Thanecore asked with amusement. "It means you were warned. We place that boundary in all public databases accessible to any spacefaring species. We stated clearly that crossing it with hostile intent would result in immediate military response. We asked you to leave. You chose war." Deho paused, and when he spoke again, his voice was hard as steel. "Humanity accepts." The massive alien warship appeared at the edge of the solar system without warning. It was huge, bigger than any structure humanity had ever built. Behind it, more ships emerged from the darkness of space. One by one they came through, until the sensors counted 847 vessels. They moved with purpose, arranged in perfect military formation, heading straight toward the sun and the small blue planet orbiting it. On Earth Defense Station Olympus, Captain Deho stood at the command center watching the displays. He was a calm man, someone who never raised his voice or showed panic. His crew respected him for this. Even now, as the largest alien fleet in human history approached their home, his face showed nothing but quiet focus. "Captain, we're receiving a transmission," Lieutenant Sungmin said from his station. The young officer's hands shook slightly as he worked his controls. "It's broadcasting on all frequencies. They want us to hear it." "Put it through," Deho replied. The voice that filled the command center was deep and harsh, speaking English with a strange accent. "Primitive humans of Earth, I am Fleet Commander Thanecore of the Vakthari Empire. We have conquered 23 star systems. We have destroyed 1,000 worlds that resisted us. Your species is young and weak. You have one rotation of your planet to surrender completely. Give us your world, your resources, your people. Become servants of the Empire. This is mercy. Refuse, and we will show you what happens to those who defy the Vakthari." The transmission ended. The command center was silent. Every person there knew what this meant. They had always known someone might come from the stars. "They had always feared this day, Captain?" Sungmin asked quietly. "Wait," Deho said. "They're not done. He was right." The alien fleet had reached Mars. The red planet had a small research colony there, home to 3,000 scientists studying the planet's geology and testing terraforming equipment. These people were civilians, researchers, and engineers with families back on Earth. The alien fleet didn't hesitate. Thanakor gave an order, and 20 of his warships fired together. Beams of purple energy crossed the space between the fleet and Mars in seconds. They hit the colony's dome with devastating force. The structure that had taken 15 years to build disappeared in a flash of light. 3,000 people died instantly, vaporized before they could even understand what was happening. On Olympus Station, the crew watched in horror. Some of the younger officers gasped. One woman started to cry silently at her station. They all knew people on Mars. Friends, colleagues, family members. Deho felt something cold settle in his chest. He had known some of those scientists personally. He had visited the Mars colony twice. He remembered walking through those corridors, sharing meals with people who dreamed of making Mars a second home for humanity. Now they were all dead, murdered to make a point. The captain turned to his communication officer. Sungmin, open a secure channel to Earth Command. Maximum encryption. Channel open, sir. Deho spoke 2 words, his voice steady and clear. Protocol Ragnarok. On the other end of the line, there was a brief pause. Then a voice responded with a single word, confirmed. Around Earth, on every military station and ship, officers received the same message. In the underground command center in Geneva, Admiral Jaewon looked at the message on his screen. He was an older man, his hair gray, his face marked with the lines of someone who had carried heavy responsibility for many years. He stood and addressed the room full of officers and technicians. Ladies and gentlemen, Protocol Ragnarok is now active. You all know what this means. You've all trained for this moment. Humanity has been attacked without provocation. Civilians have been murdered. We offered no threat. We asked for no conflict. But they came to our home and killed our people. He paused, looking at each person in the room. Among them was Colonel Minji, his second-in-command. She was younger than him, but her eyes were just as hard. She had lost a brother on Mars today. We will respond, Jaewon continued. Not with rage, but with precision. Not with chaos, but with purpose. Every person in this room has a role to play. Execute your duties perfectly. Stay calm, trust your training, and remember why we built these weapons we hoped we would never use. In her laboratory deep beneath the surface of the moon, Dr. Hana received the activation codes. She was Earth's chief scientific advisor on defense systems, a brilliant physicist who had spent the last 20 years developing weapons that existed only in nightmares. Her hands moved across the controls, initializing systems that had been hidden and dormant for years. Dr. Hana, her assistant asked nervously, "Are we really going to use these? They killed 3,000 civilians as a demonstration," Hana replied without emotion. "They think we're weak. They think we're prey. We're going to teach them why that was a mistake." Above Earth's atmosphere, Commander Tae-young sat in the cockpit of his stealth ship, the Phantom Wind. His vessel was one of 50 that had been drifting in space, appearing on sensors as nothing more than debris or deactivated satellites. Now his systems were coming online slowly and quietly, invisible to the alien scanners. "All ships report ready," his tactical officer whispered. "Hold position," Tae-young ordered. "Let them come closer. Let them think they've won." In the alien fleet, Thanakor watched his displays with satisfaction. The human ships were all powered down. Their defense stations were going dark. Their orbital platforms showed no weapon signatures. "They surrender already," his second officer said with amusement. "These humans are even weaker than intelligence reported." But one of the older Vakthari warriors, a scarred veteran named Korval, felt uneasy. "Commander, this seems wrong. Why would they power down their defenses? Prey animals run or fight. They don't go silent." Thanakor waved away the concern. "They know they cannot win. This is the smart choice for them. We will accept their surrender, take their world and add them to the Empire. Another easy conquest." "Commander," Korval insisted, "in my 300 battles I have never seen prey go silent. I recommend caution." "Your caution is noted and ignored," Thanakor said coldly. "All ships advance to Earth orbit. Prepare to receive the human surrender." The Vakthari fleet moved forward, confident and careless, spreading out to surround the planet. They passed the moon without incident. They passed Earth's defense stations without a shot being fired. They crossed into the orbital zone, getting closer to the blue planet below. On Olympus Station, Captain Deho checked his watch. It was an old mechanical timepiece, a gift from his grandfather. The hands moved steadily forward, counting down the seconds. How long? Colonel Minji asked over the secure channel from Earth. 2 minutes until they cross the line, Daeho replied. Then we show them what humanity really is.